It's amazing. What are we 7 in now along those lines? 6 interviews, 7 episodes.
6 interviews, 7 episodes. Yeah.
I was excited for you to meet this next guy when he came in.
I had no idea. When you said, I'm like, okay, let's bring in Charles.
Charles Antis, who founded Antis Roofing about 20 years ago or so. He and I have a lot in common, and we'll save that for the interview.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the things that our audience will understand early on. Charles is just one of these high energy guys who has just made a dramatic impact on Southern California, Orange County, the world really, with his energy and what he does for a living. You met him that day. Mm-hmm. Any takeaways that really jumped out at you from the time we had with Charles?
He's he's a fun guy.
Yeah.
He's got a really good attitude and a good spirit about him. And I think, he really loves what he does.
He does.
He really loves what he does.
Passion is his middle name.
Yeah.
I've been around him a lot. And every time I see him, he's high energy. He's that guy that walks into the room and the room lights up and everybody feels Charles is in the room before you recognize it's him just by the energy you feel when he walks in.
Yeah.
And I felt that when he was here in studio with us as well.
Yeah.
So we're excited for you to hear our interview with Charles Antis, founder of Antis Roofing.
Hi, I'm Charles Antis, and you're watching From The Hart with Ed Hart.
So I'm very excited to have with me today my good friend Charles Antis, runs Antis Roofing here in Orange County. Charles, why don't you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, and blank slate right now, whatever you'd like to share.
It is a blank slate. You're right.
Go, yeah.
I'm the founder of Antis Roofing and Waterproofing. We're celebrating our 30th year of keeping families safe and dry, and that's really exciting. But I feel like more than a roofer. I love my profession. We're the people across the country that keep families and everything that we love safe and dry. Although in my age today at 57, I feel like there's a higher calling for me, if you will. That's maybe not the right words to use, but I feel like there needs to be more today. So today, I like to think that I am a people awakener. I'm someone that sees a company or a person stuck in an old way of thinking in a super adaptive world, and I have the opportunity to be a beacon to them to say, hey, we can try anything and we can fail. In fact, if we can do it and fail fast, we can learn and we can grow. And most of all, we can be fulfilled, and that's when we have the impact.
So to be a people awakener, there has to have been a moment when you awoke. Can you go back to a time when you kind of went from that shift of I'm a roofer to I'm a people awakener?
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of stages of that. I think mostly you don't know that's occurring when certain things happen in your life. When there's some levels of awareness that you can't catch up to until you look at the story in hindsight, sometimes years later. I can tell you an instance. You and I have one thing in common. We're both former Mormons.
Right.
I sometimes call that foreman. We're both Formans.
Yeah. My foreman friend. Yeah. Exactly.
And there were that was with all due respect to my parents' religion, I'm no longer Mormon.
And 2 of my kids, by the way, still as well.
Very good. And I think that's there's something powerful when someone has to reinvent themselves and leave their parents' religion. I didn't know that. I felt like I was losing my tribe. But right. In the sense, I found out more who I was, and I'm not recommending that, but I'm just talking about my journey. So, but looking back on one of those awakening moments was when I was Mormon. I went on a Mormon mission because if you're a young 19-year-old Mormon male, you better go on a mission or you're not going to have some of the choices that you think you're going to have later on, especially when you start looking at those attractive Mormon daughters that you want to date.
They say the harder you work on your mission, the hotter your wife becomes, right? So
I've never heard that. But,
all right, well, I did.
But it makes some sense.
So you and I both worked pretty hard.
I worked hard on my mission, and but it wasn't something I really wanted to do because I didn't understand it then, but I didn't really want to go and tell people that they'd selected the wrong God or whatever. It just didn't. I didn't know I didn't understand that yet, but I didn't want to go for those reasons. I was 19. Dad, these are the best years of my life. But I go to Thailand, and it's like, okay. The cool thing is when I go to Thailand, that's where I was called to go, which I believed was an action from God.
Right.
I was excited because I couldn't knock on doors there. It was illegal. And I was like, yeah.
Don't have to knock doors,
knock
yeah.
on doors. But it was like service. Okay, service to me in the Mormon faith was always like helping somebody move every weekend. And I really didn't like helping people move, especially when they didn't box up their shit. You know, I mean,
exactly.
With all due respect,
right.
I didn't enjoy
yeah,
that.
I'm not there to box your stuff.
I respect the fact that so much service is done, but I go to Thailand and all of a sudden service was teaching people English, and hey, I'm an expert here. And looking back, that was a real self-esteem booster for me, teaching these other people in foreign lands English. And then there was, cleaning parks. And then one day, this is the story I'm getting to. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. This is your platform.
We go to this orphanage and the other missionaries in the house. And if you ever see the play Book of Mormon, you know that it does capture the awesomeness and awkwardness of 6 or 8 people living together in a foreign land and the innocence of it. And there's a lot of awesome things. But one of the elders comes in and goes, hey, Elder Antis, we're going to an orphanage today. And I'm like, oh, and okay. And then he goes, well, and he was just trying to warn me. He goes, it's going to be really smelly. There's hot. There's no AC. Well, I figured that. Yeah. And they put the handicapped people all together, whether they're physically or mentally handicapped. And it didn't sound really fun. So I went there with a really low expectation of a sweaty, hot, stinky day with people that I would be uncomfortable with. And so I walked inside this, and I was assigned to this room that was a little bit bigger than our set. This set looks bigger than it is. I understand that. So maybe 4 times bigger than the set. To the audience, twice as big as that. We walked into this room. There's all these maybe 20 kids on the floor, and I realized they were taking a nap. And as I walk in, my eyes lock on this little girl, and somebody had painted like clown cheeks on her earlier in the day. And she woke up from a nap. She looked like she was like 8 or 9. And she just smiled at me, and it kind of just disarmed me, the smile.
Everything any preconceived notion you had coming in just went away.
Started to. And this is, looking back now, was powerful.
Yeah.
And so I locked eyes. There was no going away. And then she had really long arms, and she put up these long arms like this. And I just was drawn like a magical spell to go pick her up.
Nice.
But the spell was broken when I started to lift her, and suddenly she didn't weigh what she should have weighed, and I looked down, and she had a withered spine, and she hardly had anything below her chest. I don't really know how she was built, but she couldn't walk. Her legs were tiny, and I was so awkward. I didn't know what to do, and I was suddenly like that moment when you get a neighbor's kid you don't want to hold, and I turned into like, okay, I've got to end
the
this.
Awkward aunt or uncle who doesn't want to hold the baby.
Yes. So I bounced like 3 times, and as I went to release her, I felt her fingers in my back.
She just grabbed
it. It was like, and so I thought, oh, okay, but it didn't hit me yet. It hits me now, but it didn't hit me yet. And then I went to bounce her again, and as I went to bounce her again, like 2 minutes later, her arms went around me all the way. She held me tight, and she just had this big smile. She just lit up.
Wow.
And it was just so disarming. And so I held her. And I held her, and we didn't really speak because I couldn't speak Thai very well. I'd only been in the country a few months, and she didn't really speak English, but we talked, and we pointed, and we looked at pictures, and something happened, and the only way I've ever been able to maybe create a story that describes it is it reminded me of like my grandma's wooden stove when I was a little kid in this simple country house, and she had this wooden ladle she'd stir cooking on this wooden stove, and it was like grandma was stirring something up inside me that I had never felt before, because next thing I know, it was time to go, and it was 4 hours later, and I put her down. And it changed my life. I didn't know why. I went back to see this girl. I thought I might adopt her, and it wasn't why that happened, but it was an awakening moment looking back now, because at that moment, I knew suddenly what service felt like. I knew why. One of the reasons I was here was to reach this little girl, and she maybe more so was there to reach me, to find something in me that was real, a real connection. And I had a real connection with that girl.
Wow.
And that was powerful. Looking back, in a world where I didn't live up to, I couldn't feel the way I was supposed to think and feel in that religion, the way I felt. I mean, it's just the way my brain is. I couldn't use that language.
Right.
Some of the language didn't fit me, but this fit me. And looking back now, in having a service-focused business, no doubt that upbringing and the service, especially when it started to get genuine, built was the roots to where that shows up so much in our business today.
Yeah, and you trigger a perfect question that's been on my mind as you've been telling this story. And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it right out of the gate. You just diving right in. That's the Charles Antis I know.
That's the Ed Hart.
Well, that's why we connect. So how does a 19-year-old, and I was that 19-year-old Mormon missionary in Ecuador, similar experiences, different stories, but similar types of emotions and experiences. I wasn't raised in it. I converted at 18. So my upbringing was slightly different and the expectations were slightly different. Sure. But I know how it felt for me at age 19, having similar types of experiences and how I looked at those then versus how I look at that same experience now, 4 decades later. And you started to touch on that already, but from the paradigm of the 19-year-old Mormon missionary in Thailand to the 57-year-old business owner who is deep involved. I know we're getting up there, dude. You got me by a couple years, by the way. So yeah, so I'm your junior and I always will be. Do you see that experience through a different lens now that maybe what would you tell that 19-year-old kid, I guess is the question I'm leading up to, about what that experience is going to do for his life?
Oh, wow. Well, there was a lot of language that I didn't know then that really disagreed with my core. And I guess it would all tie into anything to do with a punishing God theory.
Yeah.
And it took me years to uncover that. But once I let go of a deity that would punish me for any reason after I died, I found that I was way less hard on myself. And then the magic happened, because then I suddenly was aware of everything around me, and I didn't want to ever damage any. I only wanted to lift them, because I suddenly didn't take it out on myself. And so that's a little bit of a theory that I'm recently throwing around.
Yeah.
Maybe there's value. And if you look at the way your children interpret your religion, they are not holding it the way we held it. In fact, if we could just close our eyes and go back to the God, and everyone listening to this, go back to the God of their childhood, the way it was interpreted, isn't it amazing how much more cool God's got, right?
It's amazing how he's changed.
All I'm saying is my God
so
is really, really cool, and he allows me, and that's there's no he there. I don't go to that anymore.
Right.
My language is all inclusive, so I use the word universe because it doesn't offend anybody. I live in California, I can get away with that.
Yeah,
Using
absolutely.
the word universe, it just sounds weird to anybody, to some people, but to other people we get it, because I would never use a language that would leave anybody out. And so it's like
Right.
I'm still LDS or any other religion, except God doesn't punish.
Right.
And everybody's a freaking member. Everyone.
Everyone's a member.
And
Yeah, I like
and there's no exclusion.
Yeah.
And so I would go back to that kid, that 19-year-old kid, and I would say, dude, it's all about the people, man.
Yeah.
Every person, lift everyone you touch every day, no matter what. Awaken them to see something, I would tell him to awaken others so he would be awakened. But if you can awaken someone else to see themselves higher than they ever been able to see themselves before, then you've changed everything, and then they can help somebody, because we compare ourselves to each other just the way we are. You could be raised Mormon or Catholic or Jewish or I don't know. I'm just shooting from the hip. But we sometimes compare ourselves to each other, our brothers and sisters, literally, or those in our class. And as long as I compare myself to you, Ed, I'm going to fail. But I've learned to just compare myself to myself, and I'm a way effing more awesome version of myself than I've ever been.
When you let go of that guilt.
And that's what I want to tell him. Sorry. Let go of that. There is no punishment. Yeah. There's just experiencing people and everything, and making it real, and making it purposeful, and enjoying it, and leaving everything cleaner than you found it.
Yeah.
And I could go on and give a lot other
No,
things
this is good. And I've got
but
19 different questions coming up, but one I really want to do, and in honoring your legacy of where you came from. I've met your parents. I had the opportunity. It's hard for me to not talk about your parents and get emotional, because I know how much you love them, and I met them, and they're just amazing people. But they raised you in Mormonism. They're still very active in the church.
They are.
Talk about them a little bit. Talk about lessons you've learned from your mom and your dad that still apply in your life today, even though maybe your religious philosophies aren't the same anymore. There's lessons I know that they've taught you that still stick.
Well, I was raised, I was raised in what you would call a strict household today.
Yeah.
And, my parents, they grew a lot from the way they were raised, and they created a really rigid environment, which was really common.
It's what they knew.
Yeah. And they were really awesome, though, because they taught me to always do the right thing, no matter what. I mean, if we played games all the time. My mom, I'm good at strategy because we played Monopoly and Risk and Battleship and every other game, and we did anything to win. But cheating would be absolutely, I don't even know what they do. I mean, the punishment just didn't happen. We had to be really clever if we were going to cheat. And so the other thing was, let's suppose we borrowed a game, and I'm not really making a point, but I like stories.
Yeah.
If we ever borrowed something from someone else, I've never seen the noble way and the honor that that thing is taken, how very few moments it's held, and then how crisply it's returned. Perfect.
Probably with the plate of cookies.
Yes. But let me tell an exact example. If you broke the end of the cardboard box that held the game, you know that tape that holds that little tape?
Yep.
That was a really big deal. And if you broke the cardboard box of someone else's game or jigsaw puzzle, you couldn't just tape it back. You would need to go replace that puzzle. And there's something powerful in the way that resides in me today. I really understand that it's my job to keep my side of the street clean no matter what. In fact, I know it's my job to err on the side of generosity with all of my stakeholders, even though it doesn't seem possible at times. That how could there be enough? And it's part of that abundant thinking of maybe that non-punishing God that I have today. I believe that there is enough.
Yeah. So you talk about that, your stakeholders. Who do you define as your stakeholders?
Well, I would say I can think of 7 groups of stakeholders right now, but it depends on what we're talking about. If I'm talking about change in the world, which is really where I like to spend most of my time.
Doing.
Yeah, if I do a good job of lifting and helping my people find who they are and how to be in the world and how to occur in the world and how to be fulfilled in the world, then what the product is, we install the best roofs. And we provide the best customer care, and our product looks well, and we sound well, and our stories are well. So it's more important to me to develop people. What was your question? I forgot. I got
just who your stakeholders are.
My stakeholders first of all, it's my employees. I can't see past my employees. I have about 100 employees, which is a good size for us. We're in 4 counties, and we face the HOA market, but we do more HOA roofing than anybody in the LA, San Bernardino, Orange County area. We also have an office in San Diego. Okay. And so there's my employees, and that's a really important group of stakeholders. But you go beyond them, you have our clients, and that is that certain market. But then we have other clients. We have those nonprofits that we keep dry, safe and dry. We've donated all of the habitat roofs in Orange County for the last 10 years, along with Eagle Tile, who donated the tile. We just hit the $1 million mark of that. So they're our stakeholders. You know, we donate on the Ronald McDonald House roofs, where I also serve on the board, and they're our stakeholders. In fact, you know, everybody that Ronald McDonald House appeals to, and I can go into all sorts of, I met with Chalk yesterday, they're our stakeholders, and vice versa. We share the same story. So I could get into like 13 or 14 if I drill down those holes, but let me pull back. Okay. You know, I have all those people that sell to us, the people that sell insurance to us. They're our stakeholders. We have the communities of which we reside, the communities where my employees reside. There's specific nonprofits with causes that are near and dear to our heart. They're our stakeholders. But I don't want to get any more graphic because I don't think I'm going to get anything valuable out of that. But I really think it's important to know who your stakeholders are. And it's an important thing for you as a person, you as a company, to spend some time and to drill down and write down stakeholders. If you're not used to do that, your message will change because you don't want to leave anybody out. And one big advantage we have from being from a religion where we had to reinvent ourselves is we had to make it count.
Right.
So anyway.
So a word that keeps coming up in my mind.
Where that came from.
No, that's all right. And I have a question for you that wasn't on my quote unquote agenda either. We've had a lot of conversations. I'm very familiar with your upbringing. We've talked about that a little bit. I'm very familiar with your company and why you do what you do, and we'll get into that in a minute. I've met your family. Amazing family. Charlie, Gracie, your wife, and so forth. There's a word that keeps coming up for me that I would use to describe you, and I want to just get your reaction to this word, protector. You seem to want to protect your legacy, your upbringing. You protect families with what you do, your business. You obviously are very protective of your family. You're protective of the relationships that you have. I don't know if that conjures up an image or I'm seeing it's hitting you a little bit. For some reason, this word protector comes up for me in describing you. And I've never used that word to describe you before, and I don't know why because it's so obvious.
Well, I'll start with something I left off of my mom and dad. My mom and dad taught me to do the right thing no matter what. And it just ingrained in me, whether I want to do it or not. As I've grown, I've found a way to do the right thing and love it.
Awesome.
And I think that in that, you can't leave, you have to include everyone. I must include everyone, even those that I would otherwise maybe in my past time not like. I don't allow that to reside in me anymore. I try to understand everyone has a story and a reason for it, and I can choose not to get emotional about it, but I believe that, I believe it's my job to build a bridge to everyone no matter what. And I think what I offer the organizations that I serve, the boards that I'm on, is that language, that philosophy, that tinkering, and that experience in cross-pollinating different boards in the language of all-inclusive language in a neuro way to make it real. I'm really big into marketing, so neuromarketing, I could dive down that hole, or all-inclusive language. I'm really big on that. I could dive down that hole, but it's all about everyone, and I just feel that way. So I am a protector. What's parts with my high I and my disc scale personality where I need to have the attention of everyone in the room, and once I understood that, I really became aware of the person who was on a cell phone, and I felt I had a need to reach him, because what if he didn't get the message? What if I had this really important story that was like this, almost like a precious baby, like living story, that if you heard it the right way, and if I told it in an authentic way, that it could open your eyes to something that you never saw before. And I believe I have to give that to everyone if it's something that I see. And I feel like a little bit of a modern day philosopher hack, but it's okay today, because it used to be the rigid rules. Like 10 years ago, Charles, okay, thanks for sharing. And then like about 5 years ago, people say, what'd you say, Charles? And what? You want to hear my story? And the reason is the old models aren't working in a super adaptive world. 60% of the jobs that we'll be serving in 10, 15 years haven't even been invented yet.
Right.
And we think we're so focused on this is going to work. I think we need to focus on making failure fun, making failure something,
making it okay,
and making, and taking the young mind and saying, thank God you're young, you're super adaptive, and plugging it into the older, more experienced brain. Thank God you have $10 million worth of data in your head. Let's plug this in. I theorize. I don't build the logistics on this very well, but I theorize on that really well. That's the world we want to live in. Everyone has a value, and we often tribalize, polarize, push each other aside, and fall into that bias where we only see almost religion-like or political-like what serves us. And it's my job to humanize it all, whether I'm talking about immigration or whatever, and say, hey, just like, that's your daughter, your sister, or homelessness, that's the veterans. That's not who you think it is.
That's a person, it's not a group.
It's a person. And by the way, that person has a name.
Right.
And this is his name. And by the way, this is his story. And if you hear it, it could change everything.
Yeah. Tell us how you started Antis Roofing, because I know that's more than just put food on the table for the family.
It was. I had a mortgage payment to make. The place I was working was not consistent in work, and I had just enough calls to get a few leak repairs. I really didn't have the ability to put on a roof yet. Experienced equipment, crew. It was me.
Yeah.
So I put weather stripping on the door one day just so that callers wouldn't hear my daughter crying. And so that's how tight the phone calls were, 2 or 3 a week. And I got a call from a lady, and I'm moving into another story. So I love your story. I did leak repairs. Go anywhere you want. Yeah. I found out I could repair anything that leaks, and that was what I sold. But I couldn't get very much work. It just wasn't a lot calling. And there was this story. I tell this story more than any because it's like my origin story. It's how Antis found purpose even though we didn't know it. And that was, I get this call from this lady. She's got leaks in every room, and I'm excited, driving to her house the next day. And as I'm getting closer to her home, it's near LAX, I'm noticing the homes are getting smaller, more disheveled. And, I'm not getting that feeling like I'm going to
the warm fuzzy
make mortgage payment here. But as I turn on the street, the home would be, I look and I just see like dead grass. And and the home set back that's small, and I'm hoping it's not it as I walk up because it's got one of those like 140.5 things on it.
Maybe it's the other one, yeah.
I knock on the door, and then 3 things happen that just changed everything. The lady answers the door, a middle-aged woman with this expression like, I've had a really bad week, month, year.
Life.
And before I could say hello, I'm hit with this smell. It's like mildew like I've never smelled. It almost pulls me back. In fact,
takes you back to
immediately,
Thailand.
it was bad. Yeah. And so as I start to pull away, because I'm thinking of how I'm going to exit the situation, there's no money here, I feel this tug at my finger, and I look down, and the contrast to the look on Mom's face and my face, there's this little 6-year-old girl with blonde hair and with the biggest smile like this, and she's got a visitor in her home. She doesn't smell what I smell. She's just, wow, I got a visitor. And she, in this home, didn't have a lot of visitors. It was clear. She pulls me through this crowded living room and into this like undersized hallway, and then just swoops right into this room, and I follow her, and it was a room half the size of this and very small. And I know it was a room because she pointed to the wall, and on the wall was a unicorn or a My Little Pony poster. But as she was smiling and I was in shock still, I looked down and I saw 4 mattresses with moldy bedding, and I realized that's where her and her siblings slept. And so I sat there in this doing nothing. I couldn't smile. I didn't encourage it. I felt threatened, like, oh my God, I won't survive. I got to get out of here. I've got a mortgage payment. There's no money here. But something happened. The mom walks in the room, and that same look, and there's this little cute girl smiling at me, and that's just creating, I can't take that in. I look at the mom, and from somewhere I just say, I'm going to take care of your roof. And I was like, I wanted to grab that back, and then I walked up on the roof, and it was shot. I needed a new roof. And, it was like, this is like I call it today my doctor on an airplane moment, because I think that when a doctor's on an airplane and somebody has a heart attack, you're
not checking their insurance.
We believe that the doctor's going to raise his hand, and I bet you usually he does. There might be a couple turds that don't, and I don't mean to call him a turd, because I think that you have to show up. But that doctor raises his hand, and you know what? He takes care of that patient, and I doubt they get a bill in the mail.
There's not a bill coming.
And I felt like, looking back now, this was our doctor on an airplane moment, which repeated itself. But that first day, it was like, what am I going to do? I called volunteers. I went to Home Depot. I didn't even really know, I if that family's ever listening, that wasn't the best roof, but it kept them in the house. It kept them dry. We went out, and every time I saw one of those little siblings, there were 6 kids.
Wow.
And every time I saw one of the volunteers I got, which were from the Mormon church, by the way, I've never really told that part because it's not relevant, but it is now.
I had heard the story, never that part.
We gave them that roof, and it was always like high five. And I don't run into any of those people anymore. I haven't for 10 years or so, but I will again, and it'll be like this high five, like, hey, what's going on? And that became who we were as a company. I like to say things in an inclusive, positive way, but this comes out better if I say it like this. Mm-hmm. We struck with the condition that we could never let anybody have a leaky roof just because they didn't have the money to pay. And that eventually turned into something more where, we know why we exist, to keep families safe and dry. And when your company has purpose, it allows you to get back the conversation to why we exist. It allows them to feel good about why they exist, because they can plug in their skills now. And we really work hard to explore people's real personalities, so they're not just saying what they're supposed to say. And I'm not trying to say that people in religion do that.
Of course.
But to a certain extent, you conform to the language. I look at religions today, by the way, as languages. They're all really saying do the right thing.
Wherever you were raised, you're part of that particular
But look at the Godhead. It's different in every religion. I mean, my gosh, these simple little things are just, words are different. Just like today in my nonprofit world, the word service to Habitat or to Ronald McDonald House or to United Way and the different places I serve, it doesn't all mean the same thing. Yeah. The language is different. So just look at it like we're interpreting a language. And when you're inside the Mormon church or the Catholic church, you speak the language of those people, fine. Right. But the world today is really, really connected. And so when we're out here, why don't you adopt a more universal language? And that's the reason I use universe again, because it's all inclusive. I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from.
Case in point, you use the word saint in the Catholic Church versus saint in the Mormon Church, and it's a very different definition.
Very different. Yeah.
So, okay, you said it, so you teed it up. I'm gonna hit it. You said the word service. You talked about how it might be different in all these different areas. Can you give examples of where maybe that word service might look different to some of those foundations or charities you just mentioned? Or?
Well, I pulled that one up. Just it was the first
I know,
word that
top
came
of your
to my
head,
mind.
but yeah.
So it might not be one that flies, which fine.
It's all right.
But let's ask that a different.
It's okay
way.
to fail. You just said it a minute ago.
So let's look at nonprofits. Yeah. Well, let me say this about nonprofits. All nonprofits are causes like religions with a lot of love, and sometimes the calluses. We cover up things under the hood of nonprofits. There's messy things just like the under hood of a religion. But we all in all of our groups we overlook that to the common good.
Yeah.
So there's sometimes defensive things, or I don't know why I'm going down this hole. This is not really where I want to go. But every nonprofit's different, and sometimes the language gets held onto too tight. Let me give you an example that it took me a while to get here. I hope you can edit that part out because I was stumbling until I got there. But the longest board service I've been on is Habitat for Humanity.
Okay.
It's like I didn't feel worthy to be on that board. I just didn't know I could, and we started donating to roofs, and we started getting involved, and it was. One of the things but they wanted me on the board, and I joined the board, but I told them this thing, and I told them that because I didn't know where I was in my spirituality at the time, because I didn't consider myself Mormon anymore, and this is like almost 10 years ago, and so I said they want you to pray. And to me at the time where I was getting, it's like, well, I can't really pray, because if I pray, I leave out the Muslims, and I leave out, and so there was a conflict there that still is there.
You have your method.
I thought they weren't going to let me join the board because I wouldn't speak the language, but we live in a progressive Orange County area.
Absolutely.
And I think they said, no, that's why we need you on the board. Yeah. And so I discourage holding hands and praying, even though that's what we always do. I really encourage the idea of finding a way that includes everybody. Could we slightly shift this thing to maybe something where we don't call out God or something, or maybe I do say that, but I never say it within I respect the language of the tribe. I respect the language, but if I want to be heard by everybody in Orange County, I can't speak for Atlanta. But if I want to be heard by everybody in Orange County, I know that if we make it more universal, because I don't want to be the person who's getting the home that's from another country that we don't even know their immigration past, where they were persecuted by those of this other name. And it's just respect. It's a respect issue there. I'm sorry.
It's less than treading lightly and more just
I don't even
respect.
remember what your question was.
I don't either. That's all right. Quite honestly, I don't either.
Yeah, but no, in nonprofits, the language is different. And in the nonprofits, it's so valuable for me to have my voice in Habitat if it's slightly differing, because we're living in a super adaptive world. It's so valuable that boards have younger people on there with super adaptive brains, because if you don't have younger brains on there, you're not going to be around. How many of the Fortune 500 companies are alive from 10 years ago? Do you think that rate's going to somehow stabilize? No, it's going to escalate.
Constantly changes,
Sorry.
So people watching or listening today may be considering getting involved in their community in one way or another. Could be Habitat, Ronald McDonald House, could be whatever their foundation is in their neighborhood. What advice or suggestion would you give somebody who's kind of on that fence right now, looking at how do I choose in or choose out of where I'm serving?
Well, first of all, I would say get involved, and get involved with what is near and dear to your heart, but don't join just for cause, or you're going to burn out in the wrong organization. I say, with all due respect, make sure there's a good CEO and a solid staff, and that and the board members on the one that you join, you must do this. Make sure they have what you want. I'm not talking about money, although you're usually successful. They have the traits you want. Otherwise, you might get into the cause of somebody who hasn't quite worked out their religion yet. It hasn't quite got there.
Sure.
But I want to go deeper, because I'm guaranteeing you this. The broader audience of this does not yet consider themselves, worthy's not the right word, that's borrowed from our past, but they consider themselves a candidate based on just this, maybe a little bit of an imposter syndrome, these biases placed on us. But right now, more than ever, you're the people we need.
We think we need to be a millionaire to give, or there's just time that we can give.
I see myself so much better and higher than I used to see myself. And so I couldn't say yes to a board until someone else convinced me I would be there. But I mean, I'm a roofing professional, and I used to hold my hands in my pocket because I couldn't compare to those that graduated college. I didn't want you to see the caulking in my nails or the bruised thumbnail. And now so when somebody suggested I be on the board, I cowered. And I think that's what I want to tell you people out there is, my God, we need you on the board. Right now is the time.
You have value you can
be
add.
yourself. If it lines up with what's near and dear to your heart, that story that you start to find that matters to you, and you did that criteria check that you could rewind if you missed it, then jump in and join a committee. And by the way, be honest about what you can or can't do, because you asked me before we started taping why I'm on so many boards, how I can do that, because I'm honest about what I will and won't do. They're not hiring me to run and manage things, because I don't claim to do that well.
Right.
But I can help with the messaging, and I can help draw attention, and I can help rally the troops when it's time to move the dial. And that's what I get to do. But if you tell them what you want to do and what you won't want to do, they're not going to turn your way. They're going to go, oh my God, this guy told us exactly what he's going to do,
right.
Even if it's less hours than what you think that it needs to be. And so you need to negotiate with nonprofits, because we need your talent, especially those that don't know that they have it, and especially those that are looking for that, and especially those that are young. I mean, I'm finding too many groups that we need. And the world we're moving into, it's going to be all about who you line up with.
Right.
I mean, we see so much inauthenticity out there today, but when I'm lined up with nonprofit boards like Habitat for Humanity, like I am, everyone knows, everybody that believes that everyone deserves a decent place to live, they get me. And everybody, because of Ronald McDonald House, everybody that thinks it's unimaginable to ignore sick children, they trust me.
Yeah.
And they trust our brand because that's who we align with. So align yourself up with that which is what truly aligns with you. That thing that when you're around it and when you're doing it, you feel the aliveness in you. That's what you do.
So ask them in essence, and I'm going to ask you, what breaks your heart?
What breaks my heart?
Because that's a question I would ask somebody that's thinking about where they want to serve. Where they know they want to serve, but they don't know where. And I've had that question asked of me, what breaks your heart? And oftentimes the answer to that takes you to where you should serve.
It's anybody unacknowledged. I'll tell you in one story that I can tell in 10 seconds. Paul Leone of Illumination Foundation, who helps the chronically homeless, tells the story of the one-armed veteran that they saved near death under the underpass. And when he came to, told Paul that he could count on his one hand how many times he was acknowledged in 10 years that he lived there. That's what I want. I want everyone to be acknowledged, and I want everyone to be able to see how awesome and how magic they are. And I believe, because if you knew the way I used to judge myself, and it wasn't my parents and my religion, it was just a combination of my scrupulosity brain. You know, I was so hard on myself. I'm lucky to be here. And if I can remove that mask, that lie from people, and let them see what a magic creator that we all are, then that's what I would do. But then I sound like a crusader. I'm going to go back to, I keep families safe and dry. But more importantly, I awaken people to how awesome they are.
Okay, so we've talked about stakeholders. We've talked about protecting. I'm going to go right to the core now. The most important stakeholders in your life, because I know you, is your family. What legacy do you want, for example, just Charlie and Gracie, your twins, to when they think about their dad as they get older, what do you want them to talk about when they talk about you?
Well, it's funny. You have kids. I'm 57 with 5-year-old twins, and what a blessing that is. I can't tell you. It's something. It was the hardest decision I ever made when I met and fell in love with my wife, and there was no way I was going to have more kids. The only reason it was possible is because I was too scared to ever go through with the snip. I made the appointment, and so
we are honest on From the Heart.
I love these kids. They just give me awakening every day, and I love the fact that when you're older and you have kids, you live longer. I'm counting on that because I want to live a long time for these kids, all of my kids. I love my kids, and I guess what I really want them to say, and I want them to just know that Dad made it better wherever he went. Wherever he went, every day, Dad made it better, and that's. It's not hard to do if you just think it's possible. And I'm not saying, I'm saying that if I stress today, even if I have a tough financial month or whatever's going on, anything, I realize today it's a choice. Yeah. I didn't know it was, but I can choose to, like I told you coming here today, I was a little bit stressed because I was starting to, because I thought, wow, if I get the 241 wrong, I'm going to be half an hour away. And then I just reminded myself that's a choice that you have today. So I don't do that. That's not really where I wanted to go with that.
But it is, because you addressed a very key point, and that is life is a choice. How we respond to situations is our choice. And if you can relay that message to your children and to your people around you, so many of us react to our situations and we become victims to what's happening to us rather than just looking at it as, hey, I chose this situation and I choose my response to it. So thank you. I think you were spot on. I wasn't looking for an answer, but you gave an answer that I think a lot of us are going to love. You got the community corner with the Anaheim Ducks. Talk about that a little bit, because I know that's kind of the conglomeration, if you will, of all the different work that you're doing in the community, and it really kind of comes forward with what you've done at the Ducks.
We're lucky to have great partners. Thank you, Lindsay, my awesome assistant, who put the hat in this, because this is awesome. We have 100 different nonprofits in Orange County who've taken advantage of the 20,000 seats we give away every season. That's 4 whole sections at every home game.
Wow.
And then there's this awesome spotlight on you in between the first and second period at the Antis Roofing Community Corner. And bravo and cheers to the Samuelis and the Ducks organization and everyone there that are so intent on putting people in the story, and that they allowed us to build this. And it was something Dan McQuaid helped us, from 10C. But this is awesome, and I encourage everybody to take advantage of this and come to the Ducks games on us and get involved, and we'll be able to spotlight you and draw more attention to your nonprofit, but also have an amazing time. I can't tell you how many veterans and how many children that are sometimes suffering through that are overcoming different things, and they're able to go to their first hockey game, and we get all these letters in the mail, and so that's awesome. I didn't mean to ramble this long. And this is your Movember hat.
Oh,
and,
nice.
Like I told you, I think I look like Burt Reynolds. If I just chew gum, Smoking the Bandit. I feel like if I was dark hair, but I have my Movember. My wife Dawn and Corey, Corey made me do this. She said, do it for Mike, and Mike's a friend who lost his life from prostate cancer last year. And so I'm wearing my mo. I shaved off at the beginning. I don't have my beautiful beard I normally have. And
I didn't know what your cheeks looked like until this morning.
This is for you.
Awesome. I
Wear
appreciate
it proud.
that.
And start growing your mo.
Well, like I said before, I could be in a mustache growing contest for 30 years and no one would know.
Oh,
just can't do it. I'll do my best, though. Right. I got my haircut from November.
You can paint on one of those little ones, do like some of my...
Do the Charlie Chaplin kind of. There you go. I know the story, and I just feel impressed, even though you didn't go there. I think that I'd like for those watching and listening to know the story as to how you chose to get involved with the Ronald McDonald House, with your twins. I think it's an amazing story that has blessed my life as I've heard it, and I've heard it repeated not only by you, and that's how I know it's such a powerful story, is when other people tell your story, and I still feel the same emotion.
Thank you for asking. It's funny, I would have felt bad if I hadn't brought that up on the way home.
Thought we might lead with that, but I'm glad we went there.
Thank you, by the way, for being such a friend to Ronald McDonald House, Orange County.
Wow.
Love
what you do.
You have been so helpful, and you have opened the door. And you're doing it right now. So that beautiful decision I made to get married, the hardest but best decision in my life. Let's go back to that. I fell in love, and we decided we're going to have kids. And I'm going to tell more because you want this. I don't tell this normally, but. Okay. Getting pregnant was no easy feat, and you want full honesty.
There you go.
I'm going in at 50 years old. I'm a virile man. I go in and I find out that I don't have any living sperm. And it just happens, when you get older. It's a rough one, but they become immobile. Look it up. It just happens to all men. And so I'm bummed on this. I'm feeling like less a man, and I go to see Dr. Spitz, my doctor, and he's kind of I didn't know he was a TV doctor, but now I find out he is.
Nice.
He wrote the Penis book, came out last year. I strongly recommend it. And so Dr. Spitz starts giving me clomine for a year. So many
places I could go, and I just won't.
I knew I could say, but it's true. Look him up. So Dr. Spitz gives me clomine, and clomine is a female-producing hormone drug that I take because that's how my body is going to produce more testosterone.
Yeah, our crews is laughing.
So
I
know,
listening,
but this is true. And so I'm like paranoid. I'm like, Dr. Spitz, am I going to get man boobs? And I'm really paranoid on this. No, because we're not going to do it that long. What do you mean no, because we're not going to do it that long? So he didn't really say that.
So it's a yes if we go too far?
So what happened is I was able to produce sperm. My wife, we went and saw Dr. Fredericks, an amazing fertility doctor, and what fertility doctors do is just freaky magic stuff. And so my wife produced eggs. We were able to fertilize them. We were able to pre-screen because I'm older. There's a greater chance for autism and things, and we had this amazing pregnancy. All of a sudden, my wife's got twins in her. We've already named them Charlie and Gracie, and she's super healthy. We're having this amazing pregnancy. And it's just super. I mean, she's really big and it freaks me out, but she's so happy. And we do this baby moon in the desert, and we come back. And the day after we come back from the baby moon, she's like 6 weeks premature. That she's not feeling well. We go to the doctor. The doctor says, you have preeclampsia, come to the hospital. I Google it. It doesn't look
not a good thing.
So we go in. There's 4 doctors in a room, one for Charlie, one for Gracie, one for my wife, and one for me. And I realized why when you start to watch a cesarean birth with twins. But I remember when they were born, all of a sudden the happy pregnancy's gone, because what I see then is Charlie coming out. He looks like Benjamin Button. He looks like an old man. I mean, he did. I mean, wow. It wasn't funny then, but it is kind of funny now. Back now. And Gracie comes out, and she's not breathing, and there's tubes going and everything, and I'm just sitting down in shock. And suddenly, my wife recovers. We're focused on her. We go up and look at the kids inside the NICU, in the CHOC NICU in Mission Hospital, and they're hooked up to these machines and tubes going in places I didn't know they could put tubes. And there's bells and whistles going off, and every time one goes off, it feels like you're going to lose your child. Yeah. And this is what we were born into. And suddenly we were told by the CHOC nurses, who were so helpful, and they said, you know, Charles, if you come here twice a day and pull off your shirt and lay your child skin on skin for 2 hours, 2 different times a day, we find that they heal. They have a greater chance to fully heal. And so, you know, my wife and I we drove that half-an-hour drive back and forth every day. And I remember how the mood changed. I was scared because of the bells and whistles, and every day we go in. And that's where I had my first brush with Ronald McDonald House that wasn't inside a change box in McDonald's. Yeah. And I walked by, and they had beds, and they had coffee, and they had snacks, and they had computers, and they had a rest area. And they said, hey, come. And you know what I did? I ignored them because I couldn't accept yet that I was part of that.
That you needed
club. Yeah. So I ignored them every day, kind of that pride thing I grew up with too. And one day I go in, and I'm late, and I have chronic heartburn that's really bad, and I get that bad some days, and I'm not going to be able to do this thing, but I'm late. I'm running in, and I look down, and there's no attendant at the Ronald McDonald station. And I look down, I see a little green granola bar, the Nature Valley granola bar, and I like stole it. I felt like I was stealing it because I didn't plan on paying it
now
back.
It was there for you to begin with.
Yeah,
at
but
the
I
time.
just couldn't accept it, so I took it. I justified it. It cost them 20 cents at Costco, and I ate it, and then for 2 hours I held Charlie that day. I'll never forget it because I remember the pain went away. And I was so happy. Now, when I look back, that metaphor is so profound. Wow. Ronald McDonald House is there to keep families close to their kids so the family can heal. And I lived it. And eventually, when Susan Kinney, who we both know is now with CASA, when she came by for Ronald McDonald House, it was just so easy to say yes to, do you guys have a roof? That's right. And, it's like, we go fix their roof. And all of a sudden that opened into, because Susan Kinney, and she hooks me up with Rob Parker, who was the international spokesperson for McDonald's and Ronald McDonald House. And then we were able to plug in, because I'm on the National Roofing Board. Now the National Roofing Board is taking care of all of the Ronald McDonald House's roofs across the country, over 200 roofing companies. Wow. And so it's an awesome story. And I'm on the board here, and we're doubling the size of the house now. And we've raised 8 of the 12 million. How soon does this air?
January.
So we have some amazing. We just got a call from Tennis Noyler, Pacific Life, and they're contributing $150,000. Wow. I'm sure it can be okay then, or
by then
I'll take
it will
a task.
Be. If not, we'll. Sure.
Ventura Foods has come aboard for $300,000, and it's an amazing story. And so we just have CHOC the hospital, not CHOC the foundation. CHOC the hospital, who tell our story. They donated $250,000, and what they and they're working with us, like, how can we tell the story that lifts more people, that builds the bridge. That, you know what I love about CHOC? Tom Capizzi, I've known him for a long time. He's their HR director. He's an HR director that builds the bridge all the way to all his people, and builds the bridge, and believes outside of this, it's our job to build the bridge all the way to everyone, no matter what. And I love people that think like that. Yeah. So, because we truly are changing the world, and that's what I love to do. I love to take where I have the biggest area of impact, which is Ronald McDonald House, because of the different models we're involved in, and to leverage it for the greater good of more families with sick kids being treated, more roofing companies with happier employees that suddenly have purpose in their work, and more happy houses that don't have to worry about calling a roofer. There's just a lot of people that benefit when you come together. And we have this in the roofing industry. I don't want to get off course, but we are changing everything in the way roofers see themselves. It's not just what I say, it's what Reed Ribble says. It's what different great leaders, Steve Little from K-Post Roofing in Dallas, Texas, across the country, what they're saying. Ken Kelly in Florida, I don't want to start dropping names, I'll leave people out. Right. But we are lifting the image of roofing because we know why we exist. We protect everything that matters to you. And so it's excitement when you get to purpose and intention,
sure.
Even though those are weird words if you hear them for the first time, but you just try to talk in a new way and try to get curious. Hanging around 5-year-old twins is a really good source for being a good leader today, because you have to talk like a kid to be effective, and that's why this is successful, and that's why I'm successful. I no longer talk in this military, well, if you want to do it right, you do it this way. F that guy. He's out to lunch now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the question I ask at the end of this seems almost redundant to ask, because I always ask my guests, what's in your heart? But I think you just, for the last 48 minutes, shared everything that's in your heart. But if there's just one last why, anything anything you want to talk about, share a feeling that you have, just literally what's coming up for you as we wrap up.
I don't know, Ed, I could go down any wormhole. I mean, I'm really grateful to be on this show with you. I'm really grateful that we've known each other for a few years. We've become good friends, and it's like everybody starts a podcast today. Man, you blow it out of the house like I knew you would, and you have an amazing ability to lift people and to touch people. And it blows everybody's mind that meets you, all of the people you know and touch and lift and help mingle. And that's a real gift. I think people like you have to show how they do it, because the old rules don't account for that. And I think that the new rules account for everyone and everything. And you may not see it. There's a little bit of a language barrier in the way, but the new rules are going to prevail, and it's going to be about intention. If you're in business just to make money in the next 10 years, you're not going to be around. Right. You have to, and if you're a person that wants to be happy in the next 10 years, then it's not just about being transactional. It's about asking yourself why. So, I ask myself why every day, and some days I'm like, what does that even mean? But I continue to play with words, to rewrite how I think, how I shape things, and so I can hear how other people reshape things. I mean, that we're living in a super constant changing world, and I don't think things happen the way we thought they happen, and I won't go down that wormhole. Right. But the way I stay connected, Ed, this is the most important thing to me, is I awaken myself every morning from this, whatever I wake up with, the old tapes, and I do that like I did this morning by taking a long bike ride, watching a hawk on a tree, watching a beautiful sunrise, and sitting next to a tree and feeling the aliveness in the space that I'm in. And that's more like a meditation. Mm-hmm. It's like a prayer to some people.
Absolutely.
But I start a day being awakened to the magic that is in this day. And I almost convince myself every day, as I tried to with my twins this morning, oh my gosh, this may be the best day there's ever been. And I come
I got
close
your note
to
this
that.
Morning. I appreciated that.
Well, I do.
And I felt
I
it
come
from the
close
time I
to
got that note. I felt
I
it.
feel close to that today. This may be the best day. Imagine if you could come close to that every day. I'm telling you, it's possible. And how you stage, how you open your day. I spend the first 2 hours of my day, if I possibly can, on myself. And back to that, I don't punish myself. In fact, I reward myself every day with this quiet time.
Awesome.
And that allows me to come in here and be authentic in the moment. And if I watch this later, I hope I say that I was authentic in the moment. I believe I will. Yeah. But that's the most important thing. If I come in scripted with something to say, I'm so glad you didn't ask me to do that, because then I'm not able to get to anything that matters. It's just that old bullshit, which I'm capable of spewing out.
We all are.
But let's get to what's real, what matters, and thank you. What's from the heart?
Well, that's exactly, you summed it up.
I didn't
that's
mean to
perfect
do that.
plug. No, you did it for me. And that, Hart's the last name, but it really is. This doesn't work.
And that's a beautiful man. Look at him. It's
amazing what
man.
Photoshop can do.
Yeah.
So, no, and the whole idea for this, like you said, a lot of people talk about doing a podcast, and I've talked about it for a long time, and then the stars aligned, and it was perfect. And ultimately the goal is, like I've said, like you said, to get to the heart of the person that we're talking to, because we live up here all day long, but we really function from here. We both write in the 5-minute journal, and this morning I wrote in my what would be nice if it happened today. So I have big expectations that I will lift everyone I touch, and that's everyone who's listening, in a wake, not a wave, a wake, like boom, and in ripples that last forever.
So that sounds crazy, but if you don't put it out there, it's
Not gonna
never going to
happen.
happen. So my expectations from this broadcast is other people are going to go, well, damn, I can think about it a little bit differently, and that it'll ripple out. And I think that's what you're doing here.
That's the goal.
And that's exciting.
That's exactly the goal. Thank you, Charles. This has been one of my favorite hours in a long, long time. So I really appreciate
Same
it,
here,
and I
man.
appreciate you.
And a high five.
Absolutely.